I'm Mackenzie Reynolds, 34, founder of Nexus Technologies. When my father invited me to his 60th birthday at Le Bernardin, I thought maybe things would be different this time. Despite building $1 billion company, I've always been the family disappointment, especially to my brother Jason. That night, they seated me on the patio alone while they celebrated. Inside the patio is for failures, Jason sneered. Little did they know my helicopter was about to land. Sometimes life gives you the perfect opportunity to make a statement. If you've ever been underestimated by the people who should believe in you most, hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from, and if you've ever had a moment where you finally showed your worth to those who doubted you. Now let me take you back to where it all began. I grew up in Wellesley, an affluent Boston suburb, where success was measured by the prestige of your college and the size of your investment portfolio. My father, Harold Reynolds, wasn't just a banking executive. He was the banking executive at Atlantic Financial Group. His definition of success was narrow: Harvard education, finance career, country club membership, and a sprawling colonial house in the right neighborhood. My mother, Elizabeth, played her part perfectly, the supportive banking wife who organized charity galas and tennis tournaments. She was kind of passive, always deferring to my father's opinions on matters big and small when conflicts arose. She'd smooth things over rather than address the underlying issues. Then there was my brother Jason, 4 years older, and my father's carbon copy from childhood. He embraced the path laid out for him. Captain of the debate team, summer internships at Dad's bank, early admission to Harvard. He soaked up my father's approval like a sponge, and in return he adopted every one of my father's values and prejudices. I was different from the beginning. While Jason played golf with Dad's colleagues' sons, I was taking apart our home computer to see how it worked. At 12, I coded my first primitive program, a birthday card for Mom with digital flowers that grew across the screen. Dad called it playing with computers. Mom thought it was cute but impractical. Computers are fine for a hobby, Mackenzie, Dad would say. But real careers are built in finance, law, or medicine. By high school, the divide was clear. Jason was class president heading to Harvard. I was the smart but odd girl, building websites for local businesses and heading to MIT. At my graduation dinner, Dad toasted Jason's guidance of his quirky little sister. I was 18 and already invisible in my own family narrative. College only widened the gap, while Jason pledged Dad's old fraternity and networked with future Wall Street executives. I thrived at MIT, double majoring in computer science and business. I made the dean's list every semester, but my achievements were footnotes at family gatherings. MIT is a good engineering school. Dad would tell his friends, his tone suggesting it was a consolation prize for not making Harvard. The real break came after graduation. Jason went straight to Atlantic Financial, starting in a VP position that mysteriously opened just as he graduated. I turned down 6 corporate job offers to start Nexus Technologies with my roommate Stephanie and 2 classmates playing entrepreneur. Jason called it a phase before she joins the real world. My parents' reaction was a mixture of confusion and concern. "Darling, wouldn't you rather get some experience at an established company first?" Mom asked delicately. Dad was more direct. "No, Reynolds has ever worked for a startup. We build careers at institutions. Those early years were brutal." While Jason bought his first Porsche and a downtown Boston condo, I lived in a tiny apartment with 3 roommates eating ramen and working 18-hour days at Christmas. Jason would show off his new Rolex, while I'd try to explain our latest software breakthrough to uninterested faces. Something about OP's dad would say vaguely when his friends asked what I did. The hardest part wasn't the work or the financial struggle. It was the constant doubt radiating from my family. Every holiday, every birthday dinner became an exercise in endurance. Jason's promotions were celebrated with champagne. My company's first $1 million in revenue was met with, "But is it sustainable? Not everyone can follow the traditional path," Mom would say, attempting to defend me while simultaneously implying I'd chosen a lesser route. Jason was crueler. "Tech is just a bubble," he'd say when it bursts. "There's always a desk for you in customer service at the bank." 5 years in our company secured major funding and started to gain real traction. Jason had to find new angles for his disdain. "Anyone can get venture capital in this market." He dismissed it. "They're throwing money at anything with tech in the name." When we landed our first Fortune 500 client, he shrugged. "They're probably just filling some diversity quota by hiring a woman-led company." Mom would always try to mediate, offering platitudes like, "Both of my children are so accomplished in their own ways." as if we were in completely different leagues. The last family gathering before Dad's birthday had been Thanksgiving 6 months earlier. By then, Nexus had grown to over 200 employees, with offices in 3 cities. We were featured in Fast Company and Forbes, yet when I arrived, nothing had changed. "How's your little startup, Dad?" asked the same question he'd been asking for 8 years. Later, as we heard PA news broke that one of our competitors had been acquired for $2 billion. "Lucky timing for that industry," Jason remarked. "Ride the wave while it lasts, Mac." I left early that night, making a decision in my car. I would give them one more chance. Dad's 60th birthday. I would show up, be gracious, and open the door to a different relationship. But if nothing changed, I would finally accept that my family might never see me clearly, and I would stop seeking their approval. Little did I know how dramatically that resolution would be tested. The invitation to Dad's 60th birthday celebration arrived in early May. Heavy cream car talk with gold embossing, organized by Mom with her usual attention to social detail. Black tie optional. It's specified for dinner at Le Bernardin, one of the most exclusive restaurants in the city. My name was penned in my mother's elegant handwriting. I called Stephanie immediately after receiving it. "You're not seriously considering going, are you?" she asked when I told her. As both my best friend and colleague, she'd witnessed years of my family dynamics firsthand. It's his 60th Steph milestone birthday. Every time you go to these things, you come back devastated. Remember Christmas? You didn't get out of bed the next day. I sighed, turning the invitation over in my hand. This time could be different. Our latest valuation puts us at nearly $1 billion. They can't keep pretending. I'm running some cute little side hustle. They've been pretending for years. Your brother could find you curing cancer, and he'd call it playing scientist. Despite her warnings, I decided to go. Perhaps it was hope. Perhaps masochism. But I marked "will attend" on the RSVP card and mailed it back. That same week, our company entered preliminary talks to acquire DataSphere, a data analytics firm that would perfectly complement our existing services. The acquisition would cost $1.2 billion, our biggest move yet. As negotiations progressed, our team scheduled a critical board meeting for the same weekend as Dad's birthday. I can make both work. I insisted when my executive team suggested rescheduling the dinner Saturday night. We'll do final prep Friday, and I'll fly back for the board meeting Sunday morning. In the weeks leading up to the birthday, I meticulously planned every detail. I bought a Valentino dress conservative enough for my parents' taste, but structured and confident for my own. I selected a rare first edition book on banking history for my father. Thoughtful, but not desperate for approval. The DataSphere acquisition grew more complex. Our competitor tech giant began showing interest in the same company. What had started as a straightforward purchase was becoming a potential bidding war. 3 days before the birthday, I had my regular session with Dr. Watson, my therapist of 4 years. "What's your ideal outcome for this dinner?" she asked. "Recognition," I said, after considering not adoration or even approval, necessarily just recognition that what I've built matters. And if that doesn't happen, then I stop hoping for it. I accept that they'll never see me clearly and stop giving them the power to make me feel inadequate. She nodded. "That's a healthy boundary. How will you manage if the old patterns emerge?" We practiced responses to potential scenarios. If Jason made dismissive comments, I would calmly acknowledge his perspective without defending myself. If Dad minimized my work, I would change the subject rather than seek validation. The goal wasn't confrontation, but self-preservation. The day before the birthday, I flew to Boston rather than staying at my parents' house as expected. I checked into the Four Seasons. I needed neutral territory, a place to retreat if things went badly. Mom called as I was unpacking. "Darling, we're so excited you're coming. It means the world to your father. I'm looking forward to it." I lied politely. "Jason and Amanda will be there." "Did you hear? They're expecting you'll be an aunt by Christmas." "That's wonderful news," I said, ignoring the familiar pang. Another milestone Jason had reached first. Another conversation at dinner that wouldn't include me and your father's partners will all be there. The Blakemores, the Sullivans, the Whittingtons, all people who knew Jason well, and me hardly at all. That evening, as I reviewed acquisition documents in my hotel room, I received a text from Thomas, our CFO tech giant, made direct overture to DataSphere board. "Need to discuss counter strategy." I called him immediately, and we talked for an hour about how to secure the deal. By the time we hung up, it was clear the situation was precarious. Tech giant was moving aggressively. We should have daily check-ins. Thomas suggested things could change quickly. Agreed. I'll call tomorrow after the dinner. As I prepared for bed, I practiced deep breathing exercises to calm my racing thoughts, half focused on the business emergency brewing, half dreading the family dynamics awaiting me the next day. In the morning, I woke to more texts about DataSphere. Their CEO wanted to speak with me directly. Tech giant had increased their informal offer. Our legal team needed guidance on how far we were willing to go. I handled what I could before getting ready for the dinner, trying to compartmentalize business concerns from family anxiety. As I applied my makeup with practiced precision, I gave myself a final pep talk in the mirror. You are the founder and CEO of a company valued at nearly $1 billion. You employ hundreds of people. You're about to make the biggest acquisition in your industry this year. Nothing said over dinner can take that away. I almost believed it. Lou! Bernadine glowed with understated elegance as my taxi pulled up. At precisely 7 p.m., the restaurant occupied the ground floor of a sleek midtown building, its entrance marked by a discreet sign and attentive doorman. "Good evening, Miss Reynolds," the valet said as I stepped out. His recognition startled me until I realized he'd probably just read my name from the reservation list. "You're the Nexus Technologies founder, right? I read about you in Business Insider last month. Amazing what you've built." I thanked him momentarily. Bolstered, at least someone in New York recognized my accomplishments. The maitre d' greeted me with practiced charm, checking my name against the guest list. "Oh yes, Miss Reynolds, for the Harold Reynolds party. They've already been seated. Please follow me." As we moved through the main dining room, I spotted my family immediately. They occupied the largest table in the center of the restaurant. The power position, as Dad would call it. I could see the back of Jason's head, his arm draped casually around his wife Amanda's shoulders. Mom was laughing at something one of Dad's partners had said. Dad sat at the head of the table, looking every bit the patriarch, celebrating 6 decades of success. The maitre d' did not lead me toward them. Instead, he veered right toward a side door. "I believe my family is seated there," I said, pointing to the central table. He looked uncomfortable. "I have specific instructions regarding your seating, Miss Reynolds. Please, this way." Confusion gave way to dawning comprehension as he led me through glass doors onto the restaurant's patio. A single small table had been set up in the corner, partially blocked by a large potted plant. From this position, I could barely see my family through the windows. "There must be some mistake," I said. "I apologize, but I was told explicitly by Mr. Reynolds, the younger Mr. Reynolds, that you would be seated on the patio." As I stood there processing this information, the patio door opened. Jason emerged, champagne flute in hand. "There you are, Mac. Glad you could make it." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Why am I seated out here alone, Jason?" He shrugged. "Space constraints? Dad invited more partners than expected. The patio is." He paused, taking a deliberate sip of champagne for failures. "We need the main table for people who matter." The casual cruelty was breathtaking. Even after years of his dismissal, this public humiliation felt like a new low. "This is Dad's birthday dinner. I should be seated with the family," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. Mom suggested that he acknowledged it, but Dad thought it would be easier this way. His colleagues want to discuss the new merger, and they wouldn't want to bore you with real business talk. Before I could respond, Mom appeared at Jason's side, her expression a mixture of guilt and conflict. "Mackenzie, darling, you're here." She air-kissed my cheeks. "I'm so sorry about the seating. I tried to tell your father it wasn't right, but you know how he gets when arrangements are already made." She was doing what she'd always done, apologizing without actually fixing anything. "It's fine, Mom," I lied. "I'm used to being an afterthought." Her face fell. "Don't say that, sweetheart. We're so glad you came. I'll come sit with you after the appetizers." We both knew she wouldn't. The waiter assigned to the patio looked mortified on my behalf. "Would you like something to drink, Miss Reynolds?" he asked gently. "The most expensive bottle of Bordeaux you have." I replied, if I was going to be exiled, I'd at least run up Dad's bell. As I settled into my solitary table, I had a perfect view of the family celebration through the glass. Dad was standing now, raising a toast. Everyone looked rapt. The perfect audience to the Harold Reynolds show. Jason sat at his right hand. The Crown Prince Mom beamed at her husband with practiced adoration. I picked up my sea bass and sipped my $900 wine. Watching the tableau of family happiness play out without me, Periodically, Mom would glance guiltily in my direction, but she made no move to join me. One of Dad's partners seemed to ask about me. I saw him gesture toward the patio, but Dad responded with a brief comment and dismissive wave that clearly ended the inquiry. The patio had only 2 other occupied tables. Both couples clearly displeased at being seated outside, despite the warmth of the summer evening. They shot curious glances my way, probably wondering what I'd done to deserve solitary confinement. I considered leaving each minute that passed, emphasized how little my presence mattered to them. I had a legitimate excuse. The Datasphere situation required attention. I could walk out, head back to my hotel, and focus on actual problems rather than enduring this ceremonial humiliation. Pride kept me in my seat. Leaving would give Jason the satisfaction of driving me away. At minimum, I would stay through the main course, maintain my dignity, then make a graceful exit. I was picking up my dessert, a chocolate souffle that tasted like ash, when my phone began vibrating repeatedly in my clutch. The persistent vibration of my phone broke through my haze of humiliation. 3 text messages from Thomas, 2 from our lead counsel Sarah, and 4 missed calls. My stomach tightened as I opened the first message. Urgent tech giant made formal offer to Datasphere, $1.4 billion. Their CEO flying in tonight, need immediate guidance. The second message contained more details. Datasphere board meeting at 9 p.m. to consider offer. They want to hear our counter before deciding. The VP legal says we need formal proposal within 2 hours. I stepped away from my table, moving to the farthest corner of the patio for privacy. I called Thomas immediately. "What's happening?" I asked the moment. He answered, "It's moving fast. Mackenzie tech giant blindsided us. They're offering all cash, no contingencies. Dataspheres. Major investors are pushing to accept. But our integration plans are superior," I argued. "We've shown how their technology complements our platform perfectly. Strategic fit doesn't always win against cold cash. Their CEO Anderson wants to talk to you directly. He respects you, says he'll give us a fair chance to counter, but he needs to hear from you tonight." I glanced at my watch. 8:42 p.m., when and where their corporate jet lands at 10:30. They've booked the conference room at the Four Seasons for 11. The board wants our final offer by midnight. My mind raced through calculations. This acquisition was everything we'd worked toward for years. The perfect integration of our technologies, a client base that expanded our market reach, talent we couldn't replicate. Losing it would set us back years and give our biggest competitor an insurmountable advantage. "I'll be there," I said. "You sure?" "I know it's your dad's birthday. I'm sure. Start preparing the updated proposal. I want a comprehensive counteroffer. Ready when I arrive. And Thomas, tell them we're willing to go to $1.5 billion with the earnout structure." We discussed. As I ended the call, I noticed Jason approaching across the patio, his expression sour. "Seriously, Mac, you're conducting business calls during Dad's birthday dinner." I slipped my phone into my clutch. "It was important." "Important," he repeated mockingly. "Can't you even pretend to care about Dad for one night? Or is your precious startup always going to come first?" Before I could respond, the patio door opened again. Dada emerged, followed by Mom. From their expressions, I could tell Jason had informed them of my transgression. "Mackenzie," Dad said, his voice carrying that familiar note of disappointment. "Your brother tells me you're working during the celebration. I had to take an urgent call about an acquisition we're pursuing." He sighed. "There's always something with these little startups. Isn't there constant drama in established institutions like Atlantic Financial? We conduct business during business hours. 8 years of building my company, and he still called it a little startup." The dismissal stung as much as it always had. "It's a $1.5 billion acquisition, Dad. That's hardly little." He waved away the figure as if I'd made it up. "Well, whatever it is, surely it can wait until tomorrow. Tonight is about family." The irony of him saying this while I sat alone on the patio was apparently lost on him. Mom touched his arm. "Harold, perhaps Mackenzie's work really is urgent. More urgent than her father's 60th birthday. I doubt that." He turned back to me. "This is exactly why I've always been concerned about your career choices, Mackenzie. No stability, no structure, always chasing the next shiny object." As he spoke, my phone vibrated again. A text from Sarah. "Datasphere CEO asks specifically if you'll be at meeting. Says decision hinges on direct conversation with you." In that moment, everything crystallized. On one side, a father who'd never respected my choices, who had seated me outside like an embarrassing secret. On the other, $1 billion company that I'd built from nothing. People who depended on me, who valued my judgment so much that major decisions required my direct input. I have to go, I said, rising from my chair. Go. Dad's eyebrows shot up. You can't leave in the middle of my birthday dinner. I'm not in the middle of your dinner, Dad. I'm on the periphery, exactly where you put me. And yes, I have to go. Our company is finalizing the largest acquisition in our industry this year, and I need to be there. Jason snorted, always so dramatic. I gathered my clutch and wrap. I'm sorry I can't stay. I hope you have a wonderful birthday, Dad. If you walk out now, Mackenzie, it makes a statement about your priorities, Dad said stiffly. I looked him directly in the eyes. Yes, it does. And if you'd ever bothered to come to even one of my company events or read any of the articles about what we've built or asked me a single genuine question about my work, maybe my priorities would be different tonight. Mom looked stricken. Mackenzie, please, it's okay, Mom. I'm not angry. I'm just finally accepting reality. I leaned in and kissed her cheek. I'll call you tomorrow. As I moved toward the patio exit, I sent a text to my private pilot. Lucas need immediate pickup. Emergency business meeting, current location. Lou. Bernadine Restaurant. His response came seconds later. On it. Helicopter can land in clearing at Central Park 5 blocks from your location. Ita, 20 minutes. I paused at the patio door, looking back at my family. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Dad had already turned away, returning to his guests. Jason was whispering something to Mom, who looked torn between following me and staying with her husband. Neither of them called after me as I walked through the restaurant outside. I took a deep breath of the summer night air for the first time in hours. I felt like I could breathe properly. My phone buzzed again with updates from my team, and I smiled as I read through their messages. These were people who respected me, who saw my value. I texted Lucas, "Perfect. I'll head toward the park now." As I walked briskly down the sidewalk, I felt a curious lightness. I had made my choice, and there was no going back. Whatever happened next, I would face it. As the CEO of Nexus Technologies, not as Harold Reynolds' disappointing daughter, I had just reached the edge of Central Park when I heard it. The distinctive whomp, whomp, whomp of helicopter blades cutting through the night air. Several pedestrians stopped to look up, pointing at the sky as the sound grew louder. Lucas was nothing if not efficient. He'd clearly been nearby when I texted, probably doing maintenance checks at our Manhattan helipad. The sleek black helicopter with the glowing blue Nexus logo approached from the south, its navigation lights blinking against the darkening sky. For a moment, I considered the theatrics of what was about to happen and nearly laughed. If I'd planned this as a statement, I couldn't have choreographed it better. But this wasn't about making a point. It was about being where I needed to be for my company. My phone rang. The restaurant's number, Mom, most likely. I declined the call and watched as the helicopter descended toward the clearing in the park. Wind from its rotors creating a small storm of scattered leaves and ruffled hair among the gathering onlookers. As I walked toward the landing site, another call came through. Jason this time, I answered. "What the hell are you doing?" he demanded, barely audible over the restaurant's background noise. "Heading to a business meeting. Like I said, there's a helicopter landing in the park. People are saying it has your company logo on it. That would be my ride," I replied calmly. His stunned silence was oddly satisfying. "You're sending a helicopter to Dad's birthday dinner? Are you insane? I'm sending a helicopter to pick me up because I have an urgent meeting about $1 billion acquisition. Dad's dinner is coincidental. Everyone is at the windows watching. You're making a scene. I'm handling a business emergency efficiently. Interpret it however you want." I ended the call as I reached the park's edge. Security personnel from the helicopter were already setting up a small perimeter, keeping curious onlookers at a safe distance. Lucas had landed perfectly in the clearing. The Nexus logo illuminated dramatically against the dark fuselage. My phone buzzed with texts. More from Jason, one from Mom, even one from Dad. I ignored them all. This moment wasn't about them anymore. As I approached the helicopter, I glanced back toward Le Bernardin, several blocks away but still visible. Sure enough, faces pressed against the windows of the upper floor. Even from this distance, I could make out the dinner parties, silhouettes, champagne glasses still in hand, watching the spectacle unfold. One of the security team escorted me to the helicopter, shielding me from the rotor wash. As I reached the door, it opened to reveal not just Lucas, but Thomas and Sarah as well. "Thought you might want the briefing en route," Thomas shouted over the engine noise, helping me aboard. I fastened my seatbelt as Lucas prepared for takeoff. Through the window, I could see a small crowd had gathered, phones raised to capture the scene in the distance. The restaurant's patio, my exile location, was clearly visible now, empty except for the staff clearing my abandoned desert. As the helicopter lifted off, my phone rang again. Dad, this time. After a moment's hesitation, I answered, putting it on speaker so my team could hear Mackenzie. What is the meaning of this? He was shouting to be heard over the background noise of the restaurant. As I explained, Dad, I have an emergency business meeting in a helicopter. You couldn't take a taxi like a normal person. Time is critical. We're closing a major acquisition tonight. What acquisition could possibly require this kind of spectacle? We're acquiring Datasphere for $1.5 billion. Their CEO and board are waiting for me to finalize terms. Tech giant is trying to outbid us. Silence on the other end. I could almost see him processing the numbers, the companies involved, the scale of what I was describing. Datasphere, he finally said. Martin Phillips' company. Yes, you know Martin? Of course I know Martin. Atlantic Financial handled their second round of funding years ago. His voice had changed, the anger giving way to something like confusion. They're worth over $1 billion now. $1.4 billion is tech giant's current offer. We're countering at $1.5 billion. More silence. I could hear murmuring in the background. Dad's business associates, no doubt, suddenly very interested in the conversation. And you're leading this acquisition personally. I'm the CEO, Dad. That's what I do. Thomas was giving me a thumbs up, clearly enjoying this exchange. Sarah was trying not to smile. I had no idea your company was operating at that level, Dad said finally. I know, Dad, you never asked. The helicopter banked left, offering a panoramic view of Manhattan glittering below in the distance. I could still make out Le Bernardin, its patio now fully visible from above. Well, Dad said, his voice stiff again. I suppose we'll talk about this another time. It seems you're busy. Very. Thank you for understanding. I paused, then added, Happy birthday, Dad. I'm sorry I couldn't stay. I ended the call before he could respond. Thomas immediately broke into slow applause. That, he said, was the most badass exit I've ever witnessed. Sarah was already opening her laptop. Datasphere's lawyers sent the latest term sheet. We should review it before landing. As we flew over the city, I took one last look at the diminishing restaurant, now just one of countless twinkling lights below. For years, I had sought validation from that table inside, from the people who claimed to love me but couldn't see me, now flying literally above it all. I felt a sense of freedom I hadn't experienced since founding Nexus. Let's focus on the acquisition, I said, turning to my team. We have a company to buy. The helicopter touched down on the rooftop helipad of our Manhattan office building at 10:15 p.m. The moment we landed, Thomas handed me an updated briefing packet. Tech giant increased their offer to $1.6 billion. While we were in the air, he said grimly, all cash, minimal conditions. Sarah pulled up the latest financials on her tablet. If we match at $1.6 billion, we'd need to rework our entire financing structure. The banks would want additional guarantees. As we rode the elevator down to the executive floor, we strategized intensely. Our team had transformed the main conference room into a war room with multiple screens displaying financial models, integration plans, and competitor analyses. CEOs here, someone called out as we entered the room, packed with about 30 people from our executive, legal, and finance teams, burst into applause. Save the applause for when we close the deal, I said. But I couldn't help smiling. This was my real family, people who believed in our vision and worked tirelessly to achieve it. Our CFO, Gregory, approached with fresh projections. If we go to $1.7 billion, we can still make the financials work, but our earnout structure would need to change. I reviewed his numbers. What about $1.65 billion with accelerated payment terms and guaranteed positions for their executive team? That could work. He nodded. Their CEO cares deeply about his people. For the next hour, we refined our approach, identifying tech giants' weaknesses and our strengths. Unlike our competitor, we could offer Datasphere true integration. Their technology would become central to our platform, not just an acquired asset to be harvested for parts. At 11:30 p.m., Martin Phillips and his team arrived. The Datasphere CEO, a brilliant engineer who had built his company from nothing, much like I had looked exhausted but determined. Mackenzie, he greeted me, shaking my hand firmly. I appreciate you making this happen on short notice. I understand you left a family event to be here. Some things take priority, I replied. This partnership is too important. We moved to the boardroom for formal presentations. My team executed flawlessly, outlining our vision for combining the companies rather than simply outbidding tech giant. We emphasized the strategic fit, how our technologies complemented each other, how our customer bases had minimal overlap, how together we could challenge the industry giants. You could take tech giants' money. I told Martin directly, it's substantial and no one would blame you. But in 6 months, your technology would be carved up and absorbed into their existing products. Your team would be scattered across their divisions. Your vision would be lost. I pulled up our integration plan on the main screen with us. DataSphere remains intact as a critical business unit. Your core technology becomes the foundation of our next-generation platform. Your engineers continue developing their innovations, but with our resources and customer base. This isn't just an acquisition, it's a true merger of complementary strengths. Martin studied the screen thoughtfully and the financial terms. I nodded to Gregory, who distributed our offer documents. $1.65 billion, total value $1.2 billion, cash at closing $450 million in Nexus stock with no lockup period, accelerated payment schedule, and guaranteed executive positions with substantial autonomy. Tech giant offered $1.6 billion, all cash, Martin noted. They're buying you to eliminate competition, I countered. We're partnering with you to build something neither of us could create alone. The negotiation continued past midnight, diving deep into technical specifications, organizational structures, and financial projections. By 2 a.m., we had addressed every concern, revised several key terms, and reached tentative agreement on all major points at 3:17 a.m. Martin looked across the table at his team, who nodded their approval. He extended his hand to me. "We have a deal," he said simply. The room erupted in restrained celebration, exhausted but triumphant professionals who knew the value of what we'd just accomplished, as the legal teams began drafting the final documents. I stepped out onto the terrace for a moment of quiet reflection. The city glowed below most of its inhabitants, asleep, unaware of the business drama that had just unfolded. My phone, which I'd silenced during negotiations, showed multiple missed calls and texts from my family. I ignored them for now, focusing instead on what we'd achieved by morning. The acquisition was formalized at 9 a.m. We held a joint press conference in our lobby. Cameras flashed as Martin and I shook hands in front of the Nexus and DataSphere logos. This strategic combination creates a new force in the industry. I told the assembled reporters together, our companies will deliver innovation that neither could achieve independently. The business press covered the announcement extensively, with several outlets noting the unusual circumstances. Nexus CEO Mackenzie Reynolds reportedly left her father's birthday celebration to personally negotiate the deal. Arriving via corporate helicopter to finalize terms, wrote the Wall Street Journal. Bloomberg's headline was even more direct: family dinner to billion-dollar deal, how Reynolds' dramatic exit led to tech's biggest acquisition this year. As the market opened, our stock surged 12% on the news. Analysts praised the strategic fit and the decisive leadership that secured the deal, despite tech giants' competing offer. By noon, congratulatory messages were pouring in from industry leaders, board members, and investors. The only message from my family came from Mom. "We need to talk. Your father is very upset but also confused. Call when you can." After the final press briefing, I returned to my hotel, the adrenaline finally wearing off in the privacy of my suite. I allowed myself to fully process the emotional whiplash of the past 24 hours. From the humiliation at the restaurant to the triumph of the acquisition. "You did it," Stephanie said when I called to update her both professionally and personally. "What do you mean you proved your worth on your own terms, and you finally stood up to your family in a way they couldn't ignore?" "That wasn't my intention with the helicopter," I insisted. "Maybe not consciously," she laughed. "But you have to admit it was one hell of a statement." After we hung up, I ordered room service and collapsed onto the bed. Physically and emotionally drained for years, I'd worked to build something meaningful while simultaneously seeking my family's validation. In one night, I've secured my company's future and finally stopped chasing approval I might never receive. As I drifted toward sleep, my phone lit up with another text from my father. "This time, we should discuss your company. Perhaps I've been uninformed about its significance. Not an apology, not quite an olive branch, but perhaps a starting point." I set the phone aside without responding. Whatever came next with my family, it would be on different terms than before. I had finally chosen myself. And for now, that was enough. 2 weeks after the acquisition, I returned to my normal routine. The initial integration of DataSphere was proceeding smoothly. Our stock price had stabilized at its new higher level, and the press coverage had shifted from the dramatic circumstances of the deal to its business implications. During that time, I deliberately maintained minimal contact with my family. Mom had called almost daily. At first, her messages growing increasingly concerned. Jason had sent a few texts oscillating between defensive justifications and reluctant acknowledgments that perhaps he'd been somewhat harsh at the dinner. Dad had emailed once a stiff formal note congratulating me on what appears to be a significant business achievement and suggesting we discuss it at an appropriate time. I'd responded politely but briefly to Mom, ignored Jason entirely, and sent Data. Simple, thank you. I'll be in touch when my schedule allows. Stephanie had called this my power move phase. You're finally operating from a position of strength with them, she'd observed. Don't rush back into the same patterns. She was right. For the first time, I wasn't anxiously seeking reconciliation or validation. I was allowing myself the space to determine what kind of relationship I actually wanted with my family, if any, on a Wednesday afternoon. Mom finally caught me by phone. Mackenzie, we need to talk about what happened, she said, her voice carrying that familiar note of mediation. Your father's birthday dinner ended quite dramatically. Yes, it did, I agreed without elaboration. The helicopter was perhaps a bit excessive. Don't you think it was necessary for an urgent business meeting? The timing was unfortunate, but unavoidable, she sighed. Darling, I understand you were upset about the seating arrangement. I wasn't upset, Mom. I was shown exactly where I stand in this family, and I made my business decisions accordingly. The helicopter would have come regardless of where I was seated. Your father has been processing things. The acquisition was in the Wall Street Journal. His colleagues have been calling him about it. That explained his sudden interest. Not my achievement itself, but other people's recognition of it. I'm glad he's staying informed, I said neutrally. Could we have lunch? Just us, she asked. I think we need to talk face to face. I considered declining, but realized avoidance solved nothing. All right. Friday at Le Pain Quotidien near my office. Noon. When Friday arrived, I spotted Mom already seated at an outdoor table, looking more casual than usual, in slacks and a simple blouse, rather than her typical country club attire. She seemed nervous, fidgeting with her water glass. You look well, she said as I sat down. Success agrees with you. Thank you. How have you been? Oh, managing your father has been difficult since the birthday. Not just about you, about everything. She twisted her napkin. Mackenzie, I owe you an apology. This was unexpected. In 34 years, I'd rarely heard my mother take responsibility for anything uncomfortable. I should have insisted you be seated with us, she continued. I knew it was wrong, but I didn't want to create conflict with your father and Jason. I took the easy way out. As I've done too many times, I nodded, allowing her to continue. When I saw that helicopter landing, it was like seeing you for the first time. Not as my daughter who chose a different path, but as this powerful businesswoman who commands respect. She looked down. I realized how little I know about your actual life, your accomplishments. You could have asked at any point in the past 8 years. Mom, I know, I told myself I was respecting your independence. But the truth is, I didn't understand your world, so I didn't engage with it. She reached across the table. I want to do better. I want to actually know my daughter. Her sincerity seemed genuine. I'd like that, Mom. As our lunch progressed, she asked real questions about Nexus, about the acquisition, about my daily work. Perhaps the first substantive conversation we'd ever had about my career. Near the end of our meal, she hesitated, then said, Your father won't admit it publicly, but he was stunned by the scale of what you're doing. He looked up Nexus valuation, and after you left, he had no idea. He never wanted to know. That's changing. He's proud in his way. He just doesn't know how to show it. After years of being wrong about your choices, has he said that he was wrong? She smiled wryly. You know your father, he said, and I quote, Perhaps Mackenzie's unconventional approach had more merit than was immediately apparent. I laughed to spite myself. It was so perfectly Harold Reynolds, the closest he could come to admitting error. He'd like to visit your office, she added. See what you felt firsthand. I considered this. I'll think about it over the following weeks. I established new boundaries with my family. I declined Sunday dinners but agreed to occasional lunches with Mom. I responded to Dad's emails but didn't initiate contact. I ignored Jason completely until he sent an awkward but seemingly sincere apology, after which I maintained minimal civil communication. Meanwhile, I focused on building deeper connections with the people who had actually supported me. Stephanie and our original founding team, key employees who had believed in our vision, friends who had cheered me on when my family wouldn't. 1 month after the acquisition, I hosted a dinner party at my apartment for this chosen family. We celebrated not just our business success, but the authentic relationships that sustained us through the building years. The people who see us clearly. Stephanie toasted, raising her glass to knowing laughter around the table. The next morning, my assistant buzzed. "Your father is here. He doesn't have an appointment." I took a deep breath. "Send him in." Dad entered my office with uncharacteristic hesitation, taking in the floor-to-ceiling windows. The awards displayed on the walls the view of the city. "Impressive," he said, gesturing around. "Very impressive. Thank you. What brings you here, Dad?" He sat in the chair across from my desk, looking uncomfortable. "I've been reflecting on things. The birthday dinner, your company's acquisition, the way I've perceived your career choices." I waited, giving him space to continue. "I followed a certain path my entire life," he said slowly. "Harvard banking, the traditional markers of success. When you chose differently, I assumed you were making a mistake because it wasn't my path." "Yes, you did. The DataSphere acquisition made me realize I've been limited in my perspective." Martin Phillips called me. Said you were one of the most impressive executives he's ever worked with." Martin is very kind. He's not kind, Mackenzie. He's ruthlessly honest, always has been. Dad straightened his tie. "He said I should be extremely proud of you. And I realized I am. I just never allowed myself to show it because it would mean acknowledging I was wrong about your choices." The admission, however circuitous, was more than I'd ever expected from him. "I'm not asking for forgiveness for the birthday dinner or other things," he continued, "but I am asking for the chance to understand what you've built, to get to know my daughter's actual life, not the version I assumed existed." I studied him, Harold Reynolds, banking titan, admitting fallibility, however obliquely. It wasn't a complete transformation, but it was a beginning. "I can give you a tour of the office," I offered. "Introduce you to the team." Relief crossed his face. "I'd like that very much." As we walked through the office, introducing him to key personnel, showing him our technology, explaining our business model, I realized something profound. For years, I defined myself in opposition to my family, especially my father, determined to succeed despite his lack of faith in my path. Now I understood that my worth had never depended on his recognition. The helicopter moment hadn't been about proving anything to them. It had been about finally completely choosing myself and the company I'd built. The change in my family's attitude was merely a consequence, not the goal. In the months that followed, we built a different kind of relationship. Not the close-knit family bond of childhood fantasy, but a measured adult connection based on mutual respect rather than obligation. Jason remained distant. Occasionally, Civil Mom became more present, genuinely interested. Dad made halting efforts to understand my world, sometimes succeeding, sometimes reverting to old patterns. I established new traditions that honored my authentic self. Quarterly retreats with friends who truly knew me, mentorship programs for young women in tech, celebrations that marked business milestones as the significant life events they were. The DataSphere acquisition proved transformative for Nexus, catapulting us into the top tier of tech companies. When we rang the opening bell at our IPO the following year, I looked out at the crowd of supporters and realized how far I'd come from that lonely patio table. My journey wasn't about helicopter moments or dramatic exits, though those made for compelling stories. It was about the slow, steady work of building something valuable, both a company and a sense of self-worth that no one could diminish by sitting me at the wrong table. Family relationships remain complicated, a mixture of love, history, expectation, and disappointment. The reconciliation is never complete, never perfect. But in choosing myself that night, I changed the power dynamic permanently. I no longer needed their approval to know my worth. If you're watching this and feeling undervalued by the people who should believe in you, remember sometimes the most powerful statement is simply continuing to build your vision regardless of who understands it. Your worth isn't determined by those who doubt you, but by the integrity with which you pursue your path. Have you ever had a moment when you finally stood in your power with family or friends who didn't see your value? Share your stories in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, please like this video, subscribe to my channel, and share with someone who might need to hear that their path is valid, even if it's not understood by everyone. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, the most important validation comes from within.